So I'd say around all 25, you switch over.
Prenatal screening is an advancement for like women. It helps them have control over their lives because depending on it, it's a woman's choice to be able to have children. I mean, to have children, and if she chooses to have children, she should know how it's going to impact her life. And the prenatal screening is something that occurs before the birth that can allow the women who are having children to decide if it's something that they're capable of doing or willing to do.
Okay, we actually have a PowerPoint for you guys. So the reason why we argue that this is an effect of ableism is because these women already had in mind having kids. Whereas ableism comes into play and more or less tells them, is this kid able to survive in our society? Is this kid normal enough that I should have this kid? So these are some rationales, such as disability causes suffering for the child as well as for the family. The elimination of fetuses with disabling traits limits the cost of disability on society. A lot of people view disabled people as being a burden because you have to spend more money on getting them medical support. You also have to get them different things that are not provided in our society since it is normal to be able-bodied.
Okay, so also part of our argument is that it's not an advancement for women. The unreflective use of these tests could actually limit women's choice because of the conviction that women should end their pregnancy if the fetus is impaired. And the choice no longer remains the sole expression of like a woman who's actually pregnant. The opinions of their family, friends, medical professional, how people would react to them in general were brought into the decision-making process.
That you have to prepare to like take care of that child can mean a lot. It can be the difference between that child having an awful life or a decent life.
I mean, that's what it should be if ableism wasn't taking effect. It should be to prepare. But when the diagnosis occurs that they like have Down syndrome, then the medical professional is going to be telling you like your child won't be able to have this, they won't be able to experience all these other things that an able child would be able to do. So the assumption is there is that the woman should then abort the pregnancy.
Is that untrue? What the doctors say, is it untrue?
It's fact.
I mean, it is true. Like that person will experience life differently, but that doesn't mean that their life isn't worth having. And I mean, they may not.
It's not necessarily
and it's
stating
also
that it isn't
someone has to take into account. Every person has a bias, and if this person believes that their life is going to be worse, they're going to, of course, push you to take care of the child differently.
It's almost like coming into class not knowing you had a quiz. If you knew before, you would prepare for a quiz. If you come in and you just have a quiz, you're gonna fail.
So you're saying,
but now you have the choice to look at the syllabus and say, "Oh, I'm gonna have a quiz."
So therefore, I shouldn't go to class.
No.
Can you give me some examples of the types of care provided by healthcare professionals or facilities that provide prenatal screening and aftercare if the mother chooses to keep the disabled child? And do you think that the financial constraints? Wait, I'll start with the first question.
What's the first method?
Wait, can you give me some examples, like if the mother chooses to keep the disabled child, right? What type of care is provided by healthcare facilities to take care of that child, if there's prenatal screening provided?
We didn't really look into that.
And my second question is, do you think that the financial constraints is a construct of ableism, and why not? And who do you think creates these financial constraints, and why?
I don't think that the financial constraints are like a consequence of ableism. It's not ableist, like it's not that the extra cost that we're talking about is like care, like hospital bills, all of these things. Like anybody, like all of these costs would have been there
Do you think that's a social construct as opposed to just the cost of, should there actually be a price of taking care of a disabled child in general in our society?
But that's not really, we're not really arguing that. We're arguing that the costs are there, so they need to be taken care of.
But why are they there? That's the question.
But it doesn't really matter at this point, because if I'm going to have a baby in 9 months, I can't just say, well, those costs shouldn't be there. I'm not going to pay for it. I'm going to have this baby in 9 months. I'm going to have to pay for it.
But I wondered if you could actually respond to that particular point about the idea that disabled people will cost more and they'll cost the insurance companies more. I'm just wondering if you think that question is directly related to your argument.
I think that the insurance company might view disabled people as a burden because of the fact that the money comes into play, but that is a part of ableism in itself. Since we as a society are used to abled bodies, therefore anything that might be from another situation, like the other disabled, will cost more, supposedly. Since we ourselves are not going through the same phase, we would think it would be a burden on our financial, on our emotional, overall.
Any final thoughts from either team before wrapping up? Yes, go ahead.
Just to reiterate, we do believe that prenatal screenings are, for birth defects, are an advancement for women's control over their lives, because the costs, and not just emotional, not just financial, but emotional, to take care of a child with a differing ability is not something that's hypothetical, it's actual. And if you know anybody who has a differing ability, you know that it's true. You know that taking care of someone, that the person that has a differing ability, that the mother of the person who has a differing ability, that has a child with differing ability, is not going to be able to go back to her job, or is going to have to pay extra money to have that child taken care of. And that, you know that in those first few years, the running back and forth to the hospital is going to cost extra money, because not everybody has health insurance, and not everybody can afford to take care of a child with a differing ability. We live in a world that not everybody makes the same amount of money, not everybody has health insurance. So prenatal screenings aren't an effect of ableism. They're for preparation. You need to know who you're gonna bring into the world, and if you can take care of them properly. Because if you don't know, if you're bringing someone into the world, you have the responsibility of taking care of them.
Yeah, we just want to leave with our final points, is that women's control is not expanded because of the expectation that she should eliminate any fetus with an inherent trait, that women are only offered the medical viewpoint, and many more people are brought into the decision-making process than whether there's been no diagnosis. We also want to say that prenatal screening for birth defects is effective ableism, because it supports the view that non-able bodies should be eliminated. And it ignores that most suffering is caused by discrimination towards disability rather than disability itself.
Team A won 57%. I will say this though, Team 2, you did a great job, because remember you came in and this was at 70%. All right. It was a beat still. Three said. One just said abstain. That's what the C means, abstain, right?
Or both.